Can we start this
Yeah.
session? Yep. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Good morning for those who are in Indonesia or in Australia. Welcome to the week 2 of Business Coaching Series. My name is Mario. Today we have Mr. William Ho as a keynote speaker who will be presenting an interesting topic of how to become an importer of Indonesian products in Australia. This event is presented by the Indonesian Consulate General in Melbourne in collaboration with Indonesian Student Association in Victoria and Tasmania, Australian Indonesian Youth Association in Victoria, and Buset Magazine. Before we jump into the presentation, I want to welcome Mr. Kunchoro Giriwaseso as a Consul General of the Republic of Indonesia for Victoria and Tasmania. So please, Mr. Kunchoro, time's yours.
Mario, thank you very much, Mario. This is the second week of the program, subject 3. Pak William Ho, the Regional Manager of PT Indofood in Melbourne, of course, and of course our fellow participants, the Indonesians and also the Australians, our future business people actually, distinguished guests, of course, ladies and gentlemen. Selamat pagi, that's my greeting, very good morning. First of all, I just want to convey our grateful, and I'm so delighted and excited, of course, to have Pak William here today. You know, I thank you, Pak, for your time to our business coaching today.
Thank you, Pak.
It is certainly our pleasure to have you here today. We understand that with more than 14 years of working experience in retail business, I believe, we have a fabulous speaker to share his experiences and insight on our today's subjects. Among them are, of course, Australian regulations relating to importing products from Indonesia, and particularly on labeling and, of course, the biosecurity quarantine regulations, as well as the safety regulations. While I know these subjects need wide and deep discussions, I'm sure Pak William will also later on be able to give us a broad outlook which can lead us to comprehend these subjects in the future. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, Australia's consistent and open economic, as well as relatively high income society, have made Australian market an attractive destination for important goods. But it's not either a secret that Australia applies strict regulations for imported goods. It's not uncommon to hear people complain about the difficulty of getting into Australian market. While indeed it has strict regulations, however, with sufficient understanding, you will all be able to meet the requirements. Import that do not meet the requirement can be seized by the Australian Department of Immigration and Border Protection, for instance, or even recall from the market. Therefore, we bring this subject earlier in our business coaching. The subject are very fundamental if you, the participants, are planning to import products from Indonesia. These are important subjects, and we are going to delve into this subject with our speaker, Pak William. Pak William, I thank you again, Pak William.
I'm very welcome, Pak.
I should stop here, I think, and I wish you, everyone here, have an engaging discussion and very fruitful discussion. I thank you very much. Mario, I give it back to you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Consul General. And before we go to the photo session, I want to ask all participants for a consent as a part of housekeeping issue. because we're going to record and broadcast this session into Consulate YouTube channel. So for those who has like objections, you can let us know in the chat box. And if you have any question, you can use text chat box as well, which is located at the bottom on your screen, and I will read it for you. And we apologize if we cannot address all of your questions. In a moment, we will send you a link of a survey, which is important for us to improve our project in the future. And if there are any objection, we can continue to the photo session. And I want to invite all participants to turn on your camera, so we will have your lovely face in our screen. And this session will be led by Mr. Lukman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mario.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, before we take a photograph, please be ready. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Once again. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lukman. Let's cut the chase to the main menu for today's session.
Mario, can I have something, Mario, before you start? Okay. So,
Yeah.
William and my dearest participants, please forgive me if I could not join with the discussion today, because I still have some other program ahead right now. But I wish you a very successful discussion, very fruitful as well. Pak William, thanks again, Pak Will. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the introduction, Pak.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, everyone.
Okay, I will continue. So we have Mr. William Ho as our keynote speaker today. And before that, I want to introduce him to you first. Currently, he is a regional manager in Australia for Indofood Sukses Makmur Limited Company, which is based in Indonesia. And within this role, he has successfully established and expanded the market for Indofood product in Australia and previously in Europe. He also used to work as a category manager or merchandise planner in head office in Coles Group in Tauranga, Victoria. As for your information, Coles Group is the biggest retail company in Australia. Today, he will give us the information related to Australian labeling, safety, and quarantine regulation, as well as how to get certification for product with specific labels, such as organic label and friendly environment label. So please, Mr. William, you can start when you're ready.
Thank you, Mario, for the introductions. Good morning, everyone. As Maria said, my name is William, and I'm currently looking after Indofood products in Australia. So today, I would like to share you some of the topics on how to become the importer of Indonesian products to Australia, which we will discuss some of the regulations and also include documentations that are required to import the products to Australia. Can you see my presentations?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, let's start it. So good morning, everyone, all the participants that are attending today's sessions. Hopefully, today I can give you some useful information which you or everyone that interested to import the products to Australia can find it very useful. If you have any questions regarding today's presentations, please do not hesitate to ask during this meeting, or you can contact us later on. So before we want to start the importations to Australia, I believe like everyone, of course, understands about the products. What do you want to import to Australia? So I'm not going to discuss in details about this strategy today, because I believe you will have another sessions. But it is important for you to understand about the 5P of the marketing mix. So first of all, the products, what are the products that you want to import or to bring into Australia, the price, because we want to keep it as a competitive as the competitor products, promotions, how are you going to promote the product that you will bring it to Australia, the place, where do you want to distribute or to sell the product, and also the people. The people is very important. It's because it's related to the human resources that will organize or it will distribute the products. So this 5P and also the SWOT analysis, I believe it is very important before you want to start any business, not just in Australia, but I believe everywhere in the world. So once you know about this, the 5P or the SWOT analysis, I want to discuss further and in depth regarding the policy or the regulations on how to import or to bring in the product in Australia. So of course, before we start doing business in Australia, you need to register for the ABN or the Australia business number. Or if you decided to open a company, you need to register the ACN, which is the Australian company number, which it will be registered under the ISEC or the Australian Security Investment Company. And of course, you need to understand about your products, about the regulations, because we don't want to see or we don't want to hear any hiccups or any issues when we are bringing the product here. Then the third, once we know the products, we want to work together with the freight forwarder. Freight forwarder here are very important to help you to not just bringing the product into the port, but also to help you through the customs. Because as we know, Australian customs are very strict. Therefore, you need all the right documentations, the right paperwork in order to release the products into yourself or into your warehouse. So we will discuss about what sort of documentations that we required in order to pass the customs. And of course, last but not least, once everything's been cleared out, you want to sell the products. So first of all, let's discuss about the safety regulations on importing goods to Australia. So as Mr. Kunchoro mentioned earlier, Australian government is very strict, and these days they are stricter than before in order to accepting the products that will be imported or enter into Australia. So if you are unsure about the regulations, or if you want to know further about the information, what are the products that is permitted, what are sort of documentations, and what of the import permit that required, you can always check with the BICON, which is the Biosecurity Import Condition Systems. With this BICON, you can also register the product, such as if the product, when we talk about the food, if the food contains some of the ingredients that need to register, you need to register the products into this BICON. Otherwise, you might have issue when the customer check the product later on. So once you have the feeling or once you have the information about this biosecurity import conditions, let's have a look on the safety regulations on importing the products or the goods into Australia. So again, there are a lot of requirements when you bringing the products to Australia, not just food, but the products that probably contain some kind of an animals or agriculture ingredients, or the product that related to the baby, bicycle, boats, clothing, furnitures, hardware, health, household, even sports, recreation products, toys, or vehicles. Why they are very important to know the regulations? Because each of these items might have different requirements, and therefore it is very important for us to check the product safety or to make sure that the product that we want to import to Australia meet these product safety requirements. Or if you see the products or all the toys, all the goods that being sold in Australia, they all have the QC stickers, which is like quality control pass stickers. Without that QC stickers or without QC testing, there's a possibility of the product will not be able to enter Australia market. So it is very important to check the safety regulations. Again, not just for the food products, but for all these products that related with the safety or with the QC requirements. Some of the products like the furniture homewares, because it contains wood, you might need to check the regulation, or you might need to fumigate the product first before it enter the Australia. Otherwise, without that, there's a possibility that the customer will issue either fine or warning, or the product will enter into the quarantine. Once product goes into the quarantine, it will cost you a bit of money. So if we are thinking to import food products into Australia, I will mention a lot about the food because especially when I work with Indofood, of course, we bring in a lot of food products into Australia. So again, the regulations to import foods are very strict, and you have to comply with the Australia biosecurity requirements. If you do not comply, there will be a lengthy process to bringing the product from the port into your warehouse. And there is also a chance, if you don't comply, the product will not be allowed to be released, or it will be destroyed at the port. So it is your responsible to work together with your freight forwarder to ensure that you have the right documents before you bringing the products into Australia. So there is Imported Food Control Act regulations, which is where the food will be inspected, and they will check whether the food will have the risk factor when you bring it or you take the product into Australia. So at the moment, there are 3 classifications when bringing food to Australia. First, what they call it as a risk food. The risk food, these are some of the products that contain some of the risks, such as, so for example, when we bring in like the dairy products, even the chips like cassava, they will consider it as a risk food. Why cassava chips is a risk? Because apparently in the cassava, there's a content called hydroacid, where you have to meet the regulations. If I'm not wrong, it should be under 10 milligram. So there are a lot of foods that will fall under the risk food. And again, on that Australian Agriculture Department, you can see a lot of information on these risk food categories. Second classification is called surveillance food. Surveillance food is not as risky as the first one. It will be less inspected, but again, it will be requirement for you to have the right documents for the inspections in the custom. The last one, when you export or import the products that requires the compliance agreement with the Department of Agriculture, Water and Environment. On these classifications, you will need to arrange a thorough investigation and a thorough inspections before the products can get released into your warehouse. So those are the 3 classifications when bringing the foods into Australia. A lot of situations when we dealing or when we bringing the foods into Australia or the products, these are the 2 common issue or the two common classifications. So these are some of the categories that fall under risk food. So any products that contain eggs, dairy, uncanned meat, which is pretty much like a fresh meat, or like the beef jerky, what the Australian call it. Any food that contains seeds and nuts, and some of the fresh fruit vegetables. Why these foods categorized as the risk foods? Because, well, in Australia, we will find, or we will hear a lot of what do you call it? Some people that cannot tolerate dairy, some people cannot tolerate nuts, and therefore you need to declare this contains very clearly on your products or on your packaging. And some of the dairy products or eggs, there are a level of requirements whether you can bring the product in or not. If it's passed over the requirements, there might be a charge for you, or you might need to register the products throughout the big icon before you can bring in the product into Australia. Like this. So some foods that you want to import into Australia, which is contain fruit, veggies, or any product contain egg, meat, you might need import permit. Without this import permit, you will not be able to release the product from your port or from the customs. So once we know the products that we want to bring into Australia, the next steps that is very important is about the food labeling and allergen guide. Without the proper labeling, or without this proper allergen guide, it will be very difficult to release the product into customs. A lot of times I heard from the important companies in Australia, they're having trouble to release the products or their cargo from the customs because they don't have the proper labeling or allergen guide on their product. So labeling informations, this is very, very important. Labeling or informations on the packaging, it has to be in English language and a clear characters. Then you need to show the nutrition content of food, which including energy of the products, protein, fat, sugar, etc. Then the ingredients of the products, which also this is where you declare any allergens or any the percentage contents of ingredients in that product. Another one, allergens. There are so many classifications of allergens in Australia, which is like peanuts, milk, sesame seed, fish, soy, and wheat. So before you exporting or bringing the products into Australia, just make sure that all your ingredients, if they have any of these allergens, you need to declare it on the packaging and also on the documentations. Last but not least, it is very important to declare the country of origins on the products. So I have some of the examples of these food labelings or packaging, what it looks like. So these are, or this one here, this is the labeling and the allergen guide. So example of the noodles. You need to declare that the noodles has the wheat, soybean, sesame products. Some of the products, like example, even these products doesn't have any peanuts or doesn't have any fish or egg, but the product might be produced or might be manufactured in a facility that has or that contains any fish or egg. You still have to declare it on the packaging. Fail to do this, it might you might face a delay in releasing the products, or basically you cannot sell the product here, or the worst, the recall of the products. I have seen quite a few times there were product recalls because they failed to put this allergen on the packaging. Then the next one is the nutritions. It's very important to have the nutrition facts on your packaging. I know it is a lot of work to find these informations, but there are Australian regulations is required to have these nutrition facts on the packaging. Last but not least, country of origin. So the new rules, they require you to put country origins in this box. And also, you need to show the manufacturing label or the manufacturing informations and your company as the exporter or importer in Australia. So hopefully we are clear so far. Again, if you have any questions regarding this, please let us know. So once you know about all this labeling, etc., then once we have produced the products into manufacturing, once it's ready to be shipped into Australia, then it is very important for us to prepare the import requirements and documentations. So this is something that you need to work on either with your freight forwarder to ensure that all the products or the cargo that you bring in will not be delayed in the custom. So I'll put 5 shipping documents that are very important, not just import, but also export. First, the commercial invoice. I hope you can see the samples, the commercial samples here. So on the invoice, you need to put seller details, the buyer details, and your forwarder agent. Because your forwarder agency, they will be responsible too when the product arrives in the port. Then of course the HS code, the health and safety code. You need to get the right HS code for the customer to check. Product descriptions, the quantity of the products that you bring in, what's the price. You need to show the clear currency, whether you use USD or Australia, payment terms, and of course here, the PO number. So the second documents that you need to have is the packing list. So packing list is different from the invoice. So the purpose of this packing list is to outline how your shipment is details. Not just descriptions, the quantity, the weight of your products, and the dimension of the product. So sometimes you need to declare also type of the packaging that you use. Because if you are using sample wood or bamboo, the quarantine or the customs will be interested to check or to put the product into quarantine. Because obviously anything related or contain any wood or any bamboo materials, it is subject to quarantine, or it is subject to a very, very tight custom. Third document that you need is the packing declarations. So when we bringing the goods into Australia, we need to have these packing declarations for your sea freight shipment. And again, what type of materials that has been used when you pack the goods. So on these packing declarations, there are quite a few questions that you need to answer. And before that, you need to put the company letterhead. So whether you are importing the products from the manufacturer directly, or you are using agency to bring the products here, you need to have a clear company letterhead. Then you need to answer all these questions without exceptions. For example, here, is your product contain any timber or bamboo packaging, which might require a treatment? And if no, then you just go further to the other questions. Fourth document that we need, certificate of origin. Why this certificate of origin important? Pretty much to declare where the products made from, and also because some countries have the trade agreement, like example Indonesia with Australia because of the ISEPA. So we will avoid any duty charges, or I think for food there will be no charges, but for any other products there might be a small charge, but you just need to double check. So this is what the certificate of origin document looks like. You need to put all the required informations from the manufacturing informations or from where the product sent from. Usually you will get the stamp of the Indonesian custom. Then here, all the information about the products. Product descriptions, the weight, and the HS code. They are a lot of information required, but it is very important to have all these documentations to avoid any delay. Then last but least, very rarely used. Luckily, we haven't used this general declaration of asbestos or fumigations so far. So if you bring the product using pallets, especially wood chip pallets, you will need fumigations before the container leave Indonesian port. Because without these fumigations, again, your container or your products will be delayed and get hold in the custom. Because in Australia, again, any products that contains asbestos or woods, they are strictly prohibited. So without the proper documentations or declarations, there are some consequences. You can be issued by warning, fine, or even worse, your product have to be destroyed. So yes, these are the 5 shipping documents that are very important when you are ready to bring the products into Australia, or when you dealing with your forwarder to bring the products into Australia. So what other you think that it is important into Australia? The biosecurity, which I think I mentioned earlier. Why the biosecurity is very important? Because Australia governments, especially, they want to protect the country, especially their farmers from the pest or any disease by the product that we bring into Australia. We might not realize that the product might contain any, pest or disease, but it is very important for us to make sure that every product be checked before we send it into shipment. The strict products that will be inspected, such as unprocessed agricultural produce. This is the fresh produce or the fruits if you want to import it into Australia. So you need to get the right treatment before you bring these produce or fruits to Australia. Again, timber. Any articles, any products that made of timber, could be footwear, could be your furniture. You have to get the right treatment before you get into the customs. And last but not least, any articles or product that is contaminated, especially with soil or animal and plant materials, it will be hauled into customs or quarantined before it can get released. So let's move to the next one. So these are just some of the steps how to get your cargo or goods faster from the customs. Just make sure you have the right import permit before you ship the products or before you bring the products into Australia. You provide the right documents to the Australian Quarantine and Inspection Service with all the documents that I mentioned earlier. And if your cargo or container need to be directed or need to be quarantined, then of course there will be a delay for you to be able to sell the products. It happens a lot these days. Some products, for example, cassava chips, that's the easy one. Custom found there is cassava chips in your container. Then they will require you to hold the products and do the lab tests before they can release the product. When they put on hold, means you cannot touch the whole shipment. So of course it will get delayed, and there's a potential of losing. Then also ensure your container, the shipment, is free of contamination by the soil, snails, or plant and animal materials. This is inside and outside container. Therefore, when you're dealing with your freight forwarder or the manufacturer, make sure you ask for the food grade container if you are bringing food into Australia. This is just to avoid any delay in the custom. And also the timber products they use in the packaging, even a small portion of timber or wood that you use in the packaging need to be treated by the Australian quarantine approved method. So if you do all these treatments for the woods or the timber, it will result in a faster clearance when the cargo can arrive in Australian port. Then another alternative, if you want to get things are easier, choose some packing materials such as synthetic foams, plastics, or shredded paper or similar materials, so you will not get trouble with the quarantine system. All this information here can read from this agriculture.gov.au. They provided a lot of information for you to read, or if you have any questions on that. So these are just some segments when biosecurity quarantine clearance divided or use the compliant risk. Obviously, there's a low risk products that will require less of inspection or audits from the customs. There's of course non-compliant products that will require inspection audits from the customs. These two here, it's very rarely happen, but obviously time to time, some company they don't want to declare the products in the right manner. Therefore, they try to hide the product behind the container. But when custom checked it, obviously they will get inspected. They will be put on hold in the quarantine, and again, there's another consequences, not just fines, but can have the criminal or civil prosecutions. So just make sure that you have the right declarations and you are comply with the Australian regulations in order to avoid this to happen. Okay, so from previous slides, we talked about the regulation, documentations, all this quarantine matter in Australia. But what about this labeling? Because some of the products, we may get specific labeling in order to promote our product. There are some common advantage to have this labeling. So customers can see the innovations as the sustainable products. So example, the fair trade or the organics. If your product has these organic materials, or it has the fair trade system, it is good to have this logo in your product. So the customer will appreciate, or potentially they will choose your product over the other products. Then if you are importing any seafood products, very important to have this sustainable seafood. Because from my experience from Coles supermarkets, this day the company only accepted the products or the seafood products that has this logo. Without this logo, there will be small chance for them to accept the product. Then, if your product has gluten-free, it is good to have this logo, because a lot of Australian consumers, they are gluten intolerant. And of course, last but not least, the halal certificate is also important. Just want to quickly touch about this trademark. So when you bring some products to Australia, example, when we in the food bring the products to Australia, we need to make sure that our product or the brand has the proper or register as a trademark in Australia. Because otherwise, some company might claim the brand is actually belong to them and you cannot sell it in Australia. So it is very important that you understand your property rights or trademark before you selling the product. Yeah. Of course, you can check the trademarks in Australia throughout this website. Or there are a lot of resources where you can find this information. So all these informations regarding export or import to Australia, you can find the information from any of this link. It's a very useful link, give you a lot of informations. And of course, what we want to make sure when we bring in the product to Australia is we want to be succeed. We want to sell the products. Because when you have to face the custom, or especially quarantine, it's not something great that you want. Because what we want is product. We buy the product from the Indonesia, we bring it to Australia. We want the product to be out from the custom as quick as possible. Then we want to sell the product to the retailer or the customer. So that's pretty much all the informations that I have in regards of importing the products from Indonesia to Australia. Hopefully the informations are useful or helpful for you, or if in the futures you are thinking to importing the products, or you want to be the distributors in Australia. Hopefully that would be useful for you.
Thank you, Mr. William, for the
Thank you, Mas
presentation.
Mario.
That's very valuable information for those who want to start a business or become an importer of Indonesian product in Australia. Before we go to the Q&A session, I want to remind for all participants to fill the survey that we have sent in the chat box. And we can go to the Q&A session, I think right now. There's a question here from Alex, who's asking about the labeling requirements. Is it the same for all states in Australia? And
Mhm.
what will happen if his goods do not meet the requirements yet? And is there any second chance to complete the requirements without having the product getting sent
Yeah.
back to the Indonesia?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so the labeling requirements, it is the same in all states in Australia from what I showed you earlier. So you only need to use one labeling in your product to be able to sell it in Australia. Then the next question is, what will happen if my goods do not meet the requirement yet? If this regarding the labeling, there will be a second chance for the customs for you to apply the label in each single product. So when your products or goods or container arrive in Australia, the custom will hold it until you get the right labeling on the product. Obviously, by getting your product hauled in customs, it will take time, or you might need to pay extra charge, especially if your cargo being held in the freight or the company space. They will charge quite good money, and their charge is a daily rate. It's not like a weekly or monthly rate. So hopefully that's answering the questions. But again, it is very important to get the labeling right first before you send the products here in Australia. You cannot send the products in back to Indonesia. I haven't heard any company here that send the products or the container back into Australia, into Indonesia.
Okay, thank you, Mr. William. Hopefully that can answer the question. And for the second question, we have from Benjamin here, and who's asking if a container has to be directed to an Australian quarantine and inspection service provided premises. Is this when the preliminary check at the border fails, or is it randomly done?
I think there are two things here. If you bring in the products, or if you are acting as a new company here, there will be 99% chance for the custom to check your container. Then once it goes through, then the second time you importing the goods or the shipment, the process will be much easier. But it all depends on the products that you bring it here. The product contains all these risk fruit that I mentioned earlier, then of course the custom will be interested to inspect your products. So if the container has to be directed to an Australian quarantine approved premises, if you have your own space or warehouse, you can bring the container to your warehouse until the custom has finished inspecting your goods, or until, say, example, you have to do some kind of lab test. So you have to put on hold all your products into your warehouse before you can start selling it.
Thank you, Mr. William. Hopefully you can answer the question. For all participants, if you still have any question, you can drop in the chat box. And there is a question from Anggi Dewita. If we only want to send the product sample, let's say less than 5 kilograms, do we also have to obligate all those regulations?
Product samples are relatively easier. So yes, you need to specify some of the ingredients, but you don't need to fulfill, or you don't need to have all those 5 shipping documents. Again, it depends on how are you going to send the product samples from Indonesia to Australia. But if you're sending it through shipment cargo or air freight, or example DHL, usually DHL will ask you for the packing list, what the products is, what is contained. If it contains any, that vegetable, fruits, or any animal materials, ingredients, they will ask you to get the permit first. But if it's only, for personal samples or just for the first samples, usually it's very easy to get it done. to get it into Australia. Because time to time, when we have some new products that we want to sell in Australia, we just send it, we declare it as a product samples, no value, no commerce value. So customer will understand better. Okay, Mario, thanks.
Yep, thank you, Mr. William. And we have another question from Yudi. If the customs does not accept the product, can we ship it back to Indonesia or they will dispose it?
Well, I think there is an option to send it back to Indonesia, but these days, I'm not sure if you know the situations, the sea freights are very expensive, especially if you bring the whole container to Australia. The sea freight surcharge is now 3 times compared to before the pandemic started, before 2020. So it is very costly if you want to send it back to Indonesia. So you have to think whether the value of your total products is actually more expensive than to send it the shipment to Indonesia, or your value is less. What I mean is less, when the custom disposed it, you will pay less instead of shipping back to Indonesia. So there are a few things that you need to consider.
Thank you, Mr. William. And from Mr. Benjamin, the chat box, just want to follow up that further regarding unapproved goods being stored in the seller's warehouse while custom is approving it. The question is, does the warehouse need to be ACIS approved?
If you are bringing food product, then you need to aware of your warehouse situations. So when you bring in the food products, specifically, you cannot mix it with, say example, animal products or, animal foods. So it doesn't have to be ACIS approved. As long as the warehouse conditions is clean and it's suitable to hold your products, then the customer is okay with it.
Thank you, Mr. William. And if all the participants have other question, you can put it in the chat box. And if I can wrap up the points of your presentation and for your answering the question, you have covered the Australian regulation in relation to the labeling, safety, quarantine, and shipping of the products. And in particular in the food product, and how to get the certificate of the product with specific label. I think we are at the end of the session right now. And is there any question for the last call? If no, before I close the session, I just want to inform you for the following sessions. So the nearest session is on 7th of August, which will cover how to market the product in Australian market. And for the next, in the week after, on 14th of August, we have to that's for the following market, for the 14th of August, how to market the product in Australian market. And on 21st August, we have the topic of general overview on how to make business contract. And for the last session on 28th of August, we have the topic of how to establish startup in Australia. And I want to make sure that you register in the correct link, because we have different link each session. And you can find out the link in the Instagram account of Consulate General of Indonesia in Melbourne. You can type Indonesian Melbourne, sorry, or KJRI Melbourne. So thank you, Mr. William, for the presentation. And I want to end this session by saying thank you for all participants for your attendance, and stay safe, everyone. See you on the next session.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
That participated in
Thank
the
you,
sessions.
Pak William. Thank you, Mas Mario.
So much, Pak William dan Mas Mario.